somebody has a wife and they have a history of violence, which Derek Chauvin had a history of violence, multiple reported incidents of police brutality, and he was not fired, okay? So he had a history of that. But in this case, this is just a regular person, not a cop, who happens to have a history of violence. And he comes home and he beats his wife up for being insubordinate, right? And she's talking back to him and she's just being nasty, right? And he beats her up and then he puts her in a choke. And she says, I can't breathe. Not for 1 minute, not once, but for 9 minutes. She says, I can't breathe. I feel like it would be an accident if this man had, I don't know, run somebody over without seeing them. That's an accident. He didn't get in a car thinking that he was going to harm someone, correct? But this is a man who is hearing somebody telling him, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe for 9 whole minutes. At that point, what happens if somebody can't breathe? Logic dictates that if you can't breathe, you die. So at that point, he's being told that this person can't breathe and that the only result that's going to come from him continuing to choke this person is that they're going to die. So at the point that he hears, I can't breathe, he has to know that this is going to result in a death, therefore it's premeditated. He knew that this could result in a death. And you're sitting here and you're saying that this was an accident, that this was an unfortunate incident that happens unexpectedly and unintentionally.
Right.
From a person that has a history of police brutality, he was involved in many incidents where people lost their lives as a result of
I don't know anything about that, so I can't confirm or deny that.
He did, his record shows that he actually was involved in several incidents where people lost their lives while he was making arrests or involved in chases, and he was suspended on multiple occasions. So this is a person this is not his first incident. This is multiple incidents where he has endangered people and it has resulted in death. So at this point, this is premeditated. Choking someone results in injury or death, and you're defending this as an accident. And so I'm trusting you to be a person that holds other law enforcement accountable for their actions, but you're excusing what happened as an accident. So what is going to happen if one of your officers, if you win for sheriff, is involved in an incident of police brutality, and they tell you, well, this person was resisting arrest? How are you going to hold them accountable when you're excusing somebody with a history of police brutality? How am I supposed to trust you to protect our civil rights and the civil rights of people being arrested when you're defending a person who by law has been charged with second-degree murder? So the law is saying that he's not that he's guilty, but that what he did is considered second-degree murder, but you're saying that it's not murder, that it's an accident. So what are you going to do if you're elected to ensure that incidents like these don't happen, and that if they do happen, what are you going to do to hold these people accountable? How are you going to make sure that they get the consequences that they need if they violate the civil rights of people in this city?
Okay. Well, you're saying it was intentional, right? That was premeditated?
Oh, it was premeditated, yes.
Okay. But it's now second-degree murder
Yes,
instead of first degree.
yes, it is.
Okay. So somebody determined that it wasn't premeditated, because if it was, it would be first-degree murder. Okay. Death did occur because the officer acted inappropriately. So he's being charged with second-degree murder. So somebody don't think it's intentional. Okay. You may think it's intentional. Maybe it was. Let's just say benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was intentional.
But you yourself said online when I asked you what would happen if a man choked his wife for 9 minutes and she died. I asked you directly. I said, would that be considered murder, or is that an accident? And you yourself responded and you said, in that case, it will be considered murder. But whenever I posed and I said, well, in this case, the man is not a civilian. In this case, it's a law enforcement officer, and it's not a wife. It's a person that's being arrested. Why is it murder when it's a regular person killing his wife, but it's not murder and it's not premeditated when it's a cop killing a civilian?
Okay. You gonna let me answer?
Go
First off, the cop was there doing his job. He was there for a reason. Okay. Events led up to that point of a knee in the neck. It never, I just want to make sure you're clear, because you keep bringing up that I'm defending the officer.
But you are.
I don't know why I have to keep answering that same question.
Oh, I'm not asking a question, I'm making a statement that you are defending this person.
Then why are we even here? Why are you even giving me a chance?
Because I want to know what you're going to do to ensure accountability in the officers that you will be overseeing if you get elected sheriff. I want to know what you're gonna do to train these people and to prevent incidents like these from happening. That's what I want to know.
Okay, so what is it you were here for, so I know what to answer, because I thought we were here for other reasons. You're saying things, you're not giving me an opportunity to answer. When I do give an answer, you still don't like that answer and you want to go back to something else.
I'm asking.
So are you accepting my answers, or if you're not accepting my answers, then we can just leave, because I don't know why we're even here.
Well, let's just stop for a second and take a few seconds. So, you know, the purpose of any sort of conversation and debate, there is going to be some back and forth. It's not that any one person is accepting anyone's answer or not. You know, you two represent two different perspectives, and that's why we're here, because that's obvious on Facebook. Okay, so you know, if she's refuting something you're saying and you're refuting something he's saying, that's part of a natural conversation, and that you know, that is natural. Are you uncomfortable with that, or?
I'm uncomfortable being even called a liar.
But
Well, I
nobody
didn't
said
hear
that word.
anyone call you a
I
liar.
know you didn't say the word liar, but when I keep telling you the answer, I do not believe the officer acted appropriately. The officer was completely wrong. He should not have done that. But you're not accepting that answer. You want to continue to go back to something else. That is calling me a liar by telling me that I defended him when I did not.
I'm simply just using your word against your own word. I'm not even saying that I said any of these things. You literally said.
Tell me where I defended the officer.
You said, it says, the $20 bill was thought to be counterfeit, but it turns out it wasn't even counterfeit, and that man was accidentally murdered for no reason. And you replied, then maybe we should blame the people that called the police on his accidental death. So at this point, we're not holding the cops that killed him accountable for using excessive force and choking him. We're now placing the blame on the people that called the police. So now we have to be scared to call the police
Let me answer
because
that.
they might murder someone or they might brutalize them.
So let's give him an opportunity to talk about the accountability.
I don't know
piece.
why we're even here, because you won't let me answer it, and when I do answer, you don't like the answer.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
So yeah, so just let's pause for a second. So just for ground rules, we do need to let each other answer, but no one is obligated to like or accept any answer that anyone gives. But so go ahead, your turn.
Okay. Go back to the statement I just said.
You said, the person said, the $20 bill was thought to be counterfeit, but it turns out it wasn't even a counterfeit, and that man was accidentally, in quotes, murdered for no reason. Your reply to that was, then maybe we should blame the people that called the police for his accidental death.
Okay. Do you know what sarcasm means?
This is I'm sorry.
How is that not sarcastic?
You can.
If he's gonna be rude,
How's that
I'm
not
sorry.
sarcastic?
I don't feel comfortable with
How is
this.
that not sarcastic?
So
This is
Let's-
becoming silly.
yeah, how about
Thank you.
instead of you all questioning each other, I'll just ask the questions and we'll just respond, and you guys can respond to each other if you like. So what Gineska is trying to ask you is how you are going to hold officers accountable for behavior like this if you're elected as sheriff. That's what she's trying to ask you. So we don't have to go back and you know, the individual comments.
Thank you.
But
This is what I'd rather
so
do.
go ahead.
Okay. Like I was talking about the hiring process, even though polygraph is not 100%, I agree that it's not 100%, but it is something to help eliminate an officer. Okay? So if I ask the questions, are you racially motivated, prejudiced, make decisions on race? And if they do not answer that question appropriately, they will not be hired. So that's elimination at the beginning. So the training that I want to do to make sure that everyone is treated like a human being is I am a life coach. if you know what life coach means, but a life coach helps somebody think positive, think towards the future, to believe in themselves, to set goals, know how to achieve the goals, set steps to achieve those goals. That's what a life coach does. So a life coach knows how to look at a person and see the potential in somebody. It doesn't matter what race, religion, sex. I look at everybody as seeing their potential. Because most people don't live up to the potential. They get into a comfort zone, and that's where they want to stay. Might want more, but they don't believe they can achieve more. So if I have the officers trained as life coaches, and when they're out in the community, and they can see people for their potential for greatness, then they will know how to talk to them in that manner. They will know how to talk to minorities, women, children, and say, I know you're having a bad day, but because you're having a bad day, you can get over this bad day. And you can achieve your goals. You're an important person, and I believe you're an important person. These are the things that I want the officers to say to people when they're out in the community. And they would be able to know how to say this when they are trained and certified as a life coach. Okay? And there would be other training similar to that would teach them how to talk to people in a more humane way instead of just the authoritarian type stance that most law enforcement take when they approach people. Now, if I ever come across, and it ever comes to my attention, that somebody did not follow the state law, did not follow department policy, and did not follow the training that they were given, and this training comes down from the Criminal Justice and Standards and Training Commission, which is in Florida. It's the highest level that teaches what or determines what's to be taught at a police academy. This is the group, the organization that says these are the things that has to be taught at a police academy. Whatever these officers are taught, and if they don't follow that, and somebody dies as a result of breaking the law, violating department policy, or the training, I will personally arrest them because they did not follow those rules and it resulted in somebody's death.
What about incidents that are not death related, where it's just brutality and injury?
Again, it doesn't matter if it's death or not. If they violate the law, department policy, and the rules set by the Criminal Justice and Standards and Training Commission, they will at least lose their job, and if it needs to go to the criminal level, then it will. They will again be charged criminally. But what people don't realize, just because you're not immediately arrested and charged, that don't mean something's not in the process, because the state attorney's office is the one that determines whether it goes forward. So at the very least, if I believe somebody violated a law or a rule, they would be fired, a report would be made and sent to the state attorney's office to review whether or not that person needs to have a warrant for the arrest and be arrested. Then they would go to trial. That's up to the state attorney's office. That has nothing to do with the sheriff's office. But if I believe it got to the point where they needed to be arrested immediately, then they would be arrested immediately.
Okay, that's saying though that's what you would do for reports that you hear about yourself or that you're made aware of.
Right.
However, we've been hearing that there's a lot of situations where there's no accountability among cops, and some of these reports they don't even reach the people that are at the top of the law enforcement department, because people will cover up for each other, because people will bury reports, because people will lie for each other. So how are you planning on implementing any policy or ensuring that cops are held accountable, not just by you, but by each other?
Right.
And that there is no retaliation for cops who do step up and say, hey, I witnessed an incident of brutality. One of my coworkers is committing crimes. He's hurting people. What are you going to do to make sure that every single cop has a level of accountability, not just from you, but for each other as well?
Okay. I can't talk about what every department has. I can only talk about the department that I work for. And there is a rule that says if you violate the rules, that another officer has to report you. It is a rule that if an officer witnesses another officer violating a rule, they have to report it. I can't read people's minds. I won't know unless somebody tells me whether an officer violated and another officer witnessed it. But that's all I could say. I mean, there will be a rule that says you have to report another officer.
But those have been rules that are already in
I
place in a
understand.
lot of
But
departments.
let me kinda answer
and
that a little bit more.
There's been multiple situations where cops have literally quit their jobs and try to advocate against police brutality because while they were working, every time that they tried to have some level of integrity, when it came to a situation they felt like wasn't right, or where they had to stand up against other cops who they worked with, they were told, this is a brotherhood, you don't have loyalty to the people that you're working with, you're supposed to be having our backs, and at this point, your job as a cop is to uphold the law and protect the civil rights of other people, and to make sure that no crimes are being committed, and that includes your co-workers as well. And anytime some of these men or women try to speak up or file reports to hold other officers accountable, they received harassment, they were put in desk jobs, they were alienated, they were bullied, and in many cases they had no choice except to quit and start advocating on their own, and they received threats, they received harassment. So to me, obviously that system where you just have policies in your department that say that you have to report somebody else, obviously that's not enough. So there has to be something else that you place in your department to make sure that if somebody wants to report somebody else, that it's thoroughly investigated and that they don't receive retaliation as a result.
Okay. Well, I'm 99% sure that every police department in the United States has what's called its own internal affairs. It's the cops that investigate the cops. Okay? So that is in place. But what the problem could be with that, let's say a road officer does something and another officer reports to the chain of command. Because there's a chain of command. It goes officer, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, it goes all the way to the chain of command, and eventually to the sheriff or the chief. Okay? When it gets to, let's say, lieutenant, captain level, they can determine where somebody's going to be placed in a job wise. Okay? So let's say an officer does something, another officer witnesses it, now the officer goes to the sergeant, and the sergeant goes to the lieutenant. But the lieutenant likes that road guy.
Yes.
And they're friends. And they're going to sweep it under the rug. So now that lieutenant could now place that good officer somewhere else, so he no longer is now a rat, basically, right? If it ended there, then I would never know. Okay? So I would make it a point that if you ever believe that another officer is in violation and you ran it up the chain of command and you're not satisfied in that, then you come to me directly. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a chain of command. Because if we always just skipped the chain from the bottom to the top, then I would never have, I would be so busy dealing with day-to-day
wouldn't have any time,
activity, I wouldn't be able to be a sheriff. Okay? So that's why we have all these people with different levels of authority. But like I said, if the officer that reported the other one and it was not handled to his satisfaction, then he comes directly to me, because I need to know whether or not another officer is hurting someone and it's being swept under the rug. I need to know that. Especially with today's time, I'm thinking more officers, because with those four, because Derek, I can't even pronounce his last name, Derek Chevin or something like that. And then there's 3 other guys, right? Derek is the main guy that killed George Floyd.
Well, they were all the main guys because they were all on top of him, but yeah.
Well, even if Derek wasn't in the back of his neck,